When a poor nurse, whose arm is broken from being abused by her stepfather, faces an impossible choice, accept the protection of the city's most dangerous mafia boss, a man who can kill her enemies with a nod. This is a story about the fine line between salvation and possession, between love and obsession, between freedom and a golden cage. Watch until the end to see if Mila can escape her old hell without stepping into a new one. Like and comment the city you're watching to let me know how far this story has progressed. Now, let's begin. The city smelled like rain and diesel fuel at 3 in the morning. Mila Bennett pushed through the emergency exit of Memorial General Hospital, her left arm cradled against her chest beneath a coat that cost $19 at a thrift store 2 years ago. The fabric was too thin for October. Her scrubs underneath were still damp with sweat from a 12-hour shift that had turned into 16 when the pediatric oncology ward flooded with a 3-car pileup involving 2 kids under 8. She'd splinted fractures, held crying children, and smiled so hard her face hurt. Then she'd gone home during her mandated break and gotten her arm broken for not having dinner ready. The smile was still there. Muscle memory. Survival instinct. Her sneakers made wet sounds on the pavement as she started walking. The bus didn't run this road until 5:30. Uber was $11 she didn't have. Her apartment was 43 blocks north, past the warehouse district where streetlights had been shot out months ago and never replaced. Mila had walked it before. She could walk it again. Her right hand fumbled with her phone, the screen cracked in 3 places. She pulled up the weather app out of habit, like knowing it would rain harder in 20 minutes would somehow matter, like information could protect her from anything that actually hurt. The broken arm throbbed with each step. Ray had shoved her into the kitchen counter hard enough that she'd heard the snap before she felt it. Then he'd asked what was for breakfast. Like nothing happened. Like her body was just another thing in his house that sometimes broke and needed to work anyway. She'd wrapped it herself. Taken 3 Advil from the bottle she kept hidden under the bathroom sink. Smiled when he asked if she was okay. "I'm fine," she'd said. The lie tasted like blood. She'd bitten her tongue during the fall. Mila passed a closed bodega with bars on the windows, a check-cashing place advertising payday loans at 40% interest, and a boarded-up storefront that used to be a bookstore. The city looked different at this hour. Sharper. Meaner. Like it had taken off a mask it wore during the daytime and didn't care who saw what was underneath. She kept her head down and walked faster. The first drop of rain hit her cheek at Block 7. By Block 9, it was a downpour. Mila pulled her coat tighter, but the fabric was already soaked through. Water ran down her neck under her collar, cold enough to make her teeth chatter. Her broken arm felt like it was on fire. The wrapping she'd done was amateur work, unstable, and every jostle sent pain screaming up to her shoulder. She thought about stopping, finding an awning, waiting it out. But Ray would wake up in 2 hours expecting coffee and scrambled eggs, and a smile that said yesterday never happened. If she wasn't there, he'd come looking. And if he came looking, he'd find her because he always did, because she'd made the mistake of thinking she could have a life outside his apartment, and he'd spent 3 years teaching her exactly how wrong she was. So Mila walked. She was on Block 14 when the headlights appeared behind her. At first, she didn't think anything of it. Cars pass sometimes. Delivery trucks. Taxis looking for fares they'd never find in this neighborhood. But these headlights didn't pass. They slowed, kept pace. Mila's heart kicked against her ribs. She walked faster, her sneakers splashing through puddles, her broken arm jolting with each step. The headlights stayed exactly 10 feet behind her, bright enough to cast her shadow long and distorted across the wet pavement. She thought about running, discarded it. She was exhausted, injured, and whoever was in that car would catch her in seconds. She thought about screaming, but who would hear? Who would care? The car pulled alongside her, black SUV, tinted windows. The kind of vehicle that cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Mila kept walking, eyes forward, practiced smile locked in place even though her hands were shaking. The passenger window rolled down. "Miss Bennett." The voice was male, calm. The kind of calm that came from never having to raise your voice because people listened the first time. Mila stopped walking. She didn't know why. Some animal part of her brain recognized the tone, the weight behind it, and froze her in place like prey caught in a predator's gaze. "Get in the car." It wasn't a question. Mila turned to look. The interior of the SUV was dark, except for the faint glow of dashboard lights. She could make out a figure in the back seat, male, broad shoulders, the edge of a tailored suit that probably cost more than her rent. "I'm fine," she said. The lie again. Automatic. "You're 43 blocks from home with a broken arm in a rainstorm at 3 in the morning. The voice came from the back seat now. "You're not fine." Mila's breath caught. He knew where she lived. "I don't know you," she said. "No, but I know you." A pause. Mila Christine Bennett, 27, pediatric oncology at Memorial General. Graduated nursing school with honors despite working 3 jobs. Lives at 2847 Archer Street, apartment 4B. Stepfather Raymond Donovan, unemployed, 2 prior assault charges, currently wanted for skipping a court date on a DUI. The words landed like punches. Mila took a step back. Her heel hit the curb and she nearly fell, her broken arm screaming as she caught herself against a light pole. "Who the hell are you?" The back door opened. The man who stepped out moved like violence contained in expensive fabric. Tall, maybe 6'2". Dark hair swept back, jaw sharp enough to cut, and eyes that looked black in the dim light. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, the collar of his white shirt open, and when he moved, Mila saw a flash of something metallic at his hip. A gun. He was carrying a gun. "My name is Alexander Russo," he said. The name hit her like cold water. Everyone in this city knew that name. It was whispered in hospital break rooms when someone came in with bullet wounds and no insurance. It showed up in newspaper articles about investigations that went nowhere. It was the answer to questions people were smart enough not to ask out loud. Alexander Russo ran this city the way other men ran businesses. Efficiently, ruthlessly, with the kind of power that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. And he was standing 3 feet away from her. "I don't understand," Mila whispered. "Your stepfather broke your arm tonight." Alexander's voice was flat. A statement, not a question. "Ulna and radius, clean fracture, maybe 6 hours ago. You wrapped it yourself poorly, and you're walking home instead of going to the ER because you can't afford the copay, and you're terrified he'll find out you told anyone." Mila's throat closed. "How do you show—" "I'm going to ask you a question," Alexander interrupted. "And I need you to answer honestly, because what happens next depends on it." He took a step closer. Mila should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except stand there staring at this man who looked at her like he could see straight through her skin to every secret she'd buried underneath. "Did Raymond Donovan break your arm?" The rain pounded down. Water ran into Mila's eyes. Her broken arm throbbed. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, and Mila was so tired of lying. "Yes." The word came out barely audible, but Alexander heard it. Something changed in his face. Not anger. Something colder, more deliberate. He pulled out his phone, never breaking eye contact with her, and made a call. "It's confirmed," he said to whoever answered. "Handle it." He hung up. "What did you just do?" Mila's voice was shaking now. "Get in the car." "I'm not— Mila." Her name in his mouth sounded wrong, too familiar, like he'd said it before in another context, somewhere she couldn't remember. "You can walk home and pretend this conversation didn't happen. You can go back to apartment 4B and make breakfast and smile when he asks if you're okay. You can keep lying until he breaks something that doesn't heal." He paused. "Or you can get in the car and let me fix this." "Fix what?" "Everything." Mila looked at the SUV, then at the rain, then at Alexander Russo, who stood there like the storm didn't touch him, like he existed in a different version of reality where men in expensive suits made phone calls that handled problems and women with broken arms got to choose something other than survival. "I don't understand what's happening," she whispered. "I know." Something almost soft entered his voice. "But your mother would never forgive me if I let you walk home tonight." Mila's heart stopped. "What did you just say?" "Julia Bennett." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Your mother. She saved my life once. Made me promise to look after you if anything ever happened to her." The world tilted. Her mother had been dead for 3 years. Cancer. The same disease Mila watched kill kids every single day in the pediatric oncology ward. Julia had died in a hospital bed holding Mila's hand, whispering that everything would be okay, that Mila was strong enough to survive anything. She'd never mentioned Alexander Russo. "That's impossible," Mila said. Your mother worked as a nurse at Cedar Heights back when it was still open, 15 years ago. I came in with a bullet wound and no insurance, and she didn't ask questions. Just patched me up and told me to stop getting shot. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. She was the only person who ever treated me like I was human instead of a problem to be solved. Mila's vision blurred. Rain or tears, she couldn't tell. She never told me. She was protecting you, from me, from what I am. Alexander's expression hardened again. But she also made me swear that if you ever needed help, I'd be there, no matter what. I don't need... Your stepfather broke your arm, Mila. That's the third time in 18 months. The first time was your ribs. The second was your collarbone. I know because I've been watching. The words hit like ice water. You've been watching me? Keeping you safe. There's a difference. That's insane. Maybe. Alexander stepped aside, gesturing to the open car door. But I made a promise to a woman who saved my life. And I don't break my promises. Mila looked at the door, at the dry interior, at the possibility of something other than the 43 blocks ahead of her and the apartment waiting at the end and the man who would wake up in 2 hours expecting her to smile. If I get in that car, she said slowly, what happens? You come with me. We get your arm properly set. You sleep somewhere safe. And you never have to see Raymond Donovan again. And what do you want in return? Alexander's eyes met hers. Dark. Unreadable. Nothing you're not willing to give. It wasn't an answer. It was a blank check. And Mila had lived through enough men making promises to know that blank checks always came with interest. But her arm hurt. And she was tired. And somewhere deep in her chest, buried under years of fear and survival and practiced smiles, was a tiny spark of something that felt dangerously close to hope. Okay, she whispered. Alexander nodded once. He held out his hand, palm up, like he was offering her something instead of taking it. Mila took it. His grip was warm despite the rain, steady. He helped her into the SUV like she was made of glass, careful not to jostle her broken arm. And she sank into leather seats that smelled like expensive cologne and something darker underneath. The door closed. Alexander slid in beside her. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word, and Mila watched through the tinted windows as the rain-soaked street disappeared behind them, watched the warehouse district give way to cleaner neighborhoods with working streetlights and trees that weren't dead. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. No, Alexander agreed, but it's the truth. Mila leaned back against the seat. Her broken arm throbbed in time with her heartbeat. Her clothes were soaked through. She was sitting in a car with a man she'd met 5 minutes ago, a man whose name made hardened criminals look over their shoulders, a man who claimed to know her dead mother and had been watching her for 18 months without her knowledge. She should have been terrified. Maybe she was, but mostly she just felt tired. The SUV drove through the city in silence. Mila watched the buildings get taller, cleaner, the kind of architecture that came with private security and doormen who wore uniforms. They passed the financial district, the theater district, neighborhoods where people paid more for parking than she made in a week. Then they left the city entirely. The road opened up. Trees appeared on either side, thick and dark, their branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked out the rain. The SUV's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a private drive that went on for what felt like miles. Finally, gates appeared, massive, wrought iron. They opened automatically as the SUV approached, and Mila caught a glimpse of cameras mounted on stone pillars before they drove through. The house, no, the estate, materialized out of the darkness like something from a movie. 3 stories of white stone and floor-to-ceiling windows, lit from within by warm light that spilled across manicured lawns and gardens. Even the rain couldn't diminish. Fountains, marble steps, columns that belonged in a museum. The SUV stopped in front of the main entrance. "Welcome to my home," Alexander said quietly. Mila stared. The door opened. A man in a dark suit stood there holding an umbrella, his face professionally blank. Alexander got out first, then turned and offered his hand again. Mila took it because she didn't know what else to do. The steps were marble, real marble. Her wet sneakers squeaked on the surface as Alexander guided her toward the entrance, the umbrella keeping the rain off them both. The door was already open, warm air spilling out into the cold night. Inside was worse. vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a staircase that curved up into the second floor like something out of a palace, artwork on the walls that Mila didn't recognize but knew instinctively cost more than she'd earn in her lifetime. Mr. Russo. A woman appeared from a side hallway. Older, maybe 50, with gray hair pulled into a neat bun, and the kind of face that had seen things but decided not to talk about them. The doctor is waiting upstairs. Thank you, Helen. Alexander's hand was still on Mila's elbow, steady and warm, as he guided her toward the staircase. I can walk, she said. I know, but you don't have to. They climbed in silence. Mila's legs felt like rubber. Exhaustion was catching up with her now, mixing with adrenaline and fear and something else she couldn't name. At the top of the stairs, Alexander led her down a hallway, lined with closed doors until they reached one at the end. He knocked once, then opened it. The room inside was a bedroom, but not like any bedroom Mila had ever seen. King-sized bed with a canopy, sitting area with a couch and chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens that looked like they belonged in a painting, and sitting on the edge of the bed was a man in his 60s with a medical bag at his feet. Dr. Morrison, Alexander said. This is Miss Bennett. The doctor stood, his expression kind. Hello, Mila. I hear you've had a rough night. Mila looked at Alexander. You called him before you even found me. I knew I'd find you. It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it just sounded certain, like Alexander Russo existed in a world where things happened because he decided they would, and reality bent to accommodate him. Let me take a look at that arm, Dr. Morrison said gently. Mila let him guide her to the bed, let him help her out of her soaked coat, her damp scrub top underneath. Let him unwrap the amateur splint she'd done in her bathroom mirror while Ray snored on the couch. The doctor's hands were gentle, professional. He examined the break, took x-rays with a portable machine someone had apparently brought upstairs, and confirmed what Mila already knew. Clean fracture, both bones. You did a decent job stabilizing it, but it needs to be properly set. He looked at Alexander. She'll need a cast. 6 weeks minimum. Do it. Dr. Morrison worked efficiently. Local anesthetic, manipulation. The sound of bone grinding back into place made Mila's stomach turn, but she bit down on her lip and didn't make a sound. The cast was purple. She didn't remember choosing the color. All done, Dr. Morrison said finally. I'll leave pain medication and care instructions. No lifting anything heavy. Keep it dry. Come back in 2 weeks for a follow-up. He packed his bag, nodded to Alexander, and left. Mila sat on the edge of the bed staring at her newly casted arm. Purple. She hated purple. There are clothes in the bathroom, Alexander said from where he stood near the door. Showers through there. Helen will bring food up in an hour. I can't stay here. You can't leave. Mila looked up sharply. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You're exhausted, injured, and have nowhere else to go. Alexander's expression didn't change. Sleep, eat, heal. We'll talk in the morning. Talk about what? What happens next? He moved toward the door. Wait. Mila stood, her legs unsteady. What did you mean when you said you'd handle it? On the phone, what did that mean? Alexander paused, his hand on the doorframe. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he turned to look at her, and Mila saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Your stepfather will never hurt you again, he said quietly. That's all you need to know. He left. The door closed with a soft click. Mila stood alone in a bedroom bigger than her entire apartment, wearing damp scrubs and a purple cast, while rain hammered against windows that probably cost more than her car. She walked to the window and looked out at the gardens below. Lit pathways, fountains, the kind of beauty that only existed when you had enough money to force nature into submission. Somewhere in the city, Raymond Donovan was waking up, and Alexander Russo had made a phone call that would handle it. Mila pressed her forehead against the cold glass and closed her eyes. She'd gotten in the car, made the choice, crossed a line she couldn't see but knew existed somewhere between the rain-soaked street and this bedroom with its canopy bed and views of impossible gardens. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. One new message. Unknown number. Sleep well, Mila. You're safe now. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. It landed on the plush carpet without a sound. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and somewhere deep in the house, Mila heard footsteps, voices, the sound of a door closing. She was in Alexander Russo's home, the most dangerous man in the city, and she had no idea if she'd just been saved or captured. Mila didn't sleep. She lay on top of the covers in the borrowed clothes someone had left in the bathroom, soft cotton pants and a t-shirt that smelled like lavender detergent, and stared at the ceiling until the sky outside turned from black to gray to pale gold. Her casted arm throbbed despite the pain medication Dr. Morrison had left. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alexander's face when he'd said Raymond would never hurt her again. That calm, that certainty, like he was discussing the weather instead of a man's future. At 7:30, there was a soft knock on the door. Mila sat up too fast. Her head spun. "Come in." The woman from last night, Helen, entered carrying a tray. Coffee, toast, scrambled eggs that looked nothing like the ones Mila made for Ray every morning, with her hands shaking and her smile fixed in place. "Good morning, Miss Bennett." Helen set the tray on the small table near the window. "Mr. Russo asked me to check if you needed anything." "Where is he?" "In his study. He's been there since 4. 3 hours of sleep, maybe less. Does he want to see me?" Helen's expression didn't change. "He'll send for you when he's ready." She left before Mila could ask what that meant. Mila ate because her body demanded it, not because she tasted anything. The coffee was good, strong, the kind that cost $12 a bag instead of 5. She ate standing at the window, looking out at gardens that seemed even more impossible in daylight. Stone paths, rose bushes, a pond with actual koi fish swimming in lazy circles. Her phone sat on the nightstand where she'd left it after reading that text. "You're safe now." Mila picked it up. No new messages, no missed calls. She pulled up her contact list and stared at Ray's name for a long moment before scrolling past it to the hospital's scheduling line. She needed to call in, explain she wouldn't be at work today, make up some excuse about the flu or a family emergency or... The phone rang in her hand. Unknown number. Mila's thumb hovered over the decline button. Then she answered. "Hello? Miss Bennett?" A male voice she didn't recognize. Professional. Clipped. "This is Detective Howard Chen with the Metro Police Department. I'm calling regarding Raymond Donovan." Mila's heart stopped. "What about him?" "We received a report early this morning that Mr. Donovan failed to appear for a mandatory court hearing yesterday. There's now a warrant for his arrest. When we went to execute that warrant at his residence, we found the apartment empty. His vehicle is also missing." The room tilted. "I don't understand." "We're trying to locate him. His employer says he didn't show up for work last night, and his phone is going straight to voicemail. You're listed as his emergency contact." Because Ray had put her name on everything. His lease, his car insurance, his probation paperwork. Another way to make sure she couldn't leave without consequences. "I haven't seen him since yesterday afternoon," Mila said carefully. It wasn't a lie. She'd left for her shift at 2. Ray had been on the couch watching television, 3 beers deep and getting louder with each commercial break. "Do you have any idea where he might go?" "No." "Miss Bennett, if you're protecting him..." "I'm not." The words came out harder than she intended. "If I knew where he was, I'd tell you." Another lie. But this one tasted different, less like blood and more like freedom. Detective Chen was quiet for a moment. "If he contacts you, call me immediately." He rattled off a number. Mila didn't write it down. "Okay." "Are you somewhere safe, Miss Bennett?" The question caught her off guard. Why? Raymond Donovan has a history of violence. If he's running from the law, he might try to find you, use you as leverage, or... "Oh, I'm safe," Mila interrupted. She looked around the bedroom with its canopy bed and floor-to-ceiling windows. "I'm staying with a friend." "Good. Keep it that way." He hung up. Mila lowered the phone slowly. Her hands were shaking. She sat down on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe normally, but her chest felt too tight, like someone had wrapped wire around her ribs and was pulling it tighter with each inhale. Raymond was gone. Not dead. Not arrested. Just gone. And Alexander had made one phone call. The door opened without knocking. Alexander stood in the doorway wearing different clothes than last night. Dark slacks, white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no jacket. He looked like he'd showered but not slept. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. The police called you, he said. Not a question. How did you... Mila stopped. Stupid question. What did you do to him? I removed him from your life. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Alexander stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Raymond Donovan is gone. He won't come back. He won't call. He won't show up at the hospital or your apartment or anywhere else you might be. You're free. Free. Mila laughed, and it came out wrong. Too high, too sharp. I'm in your house. I don't know where I am. The police are looking for Ray, and you're telling me I'm free? Would you rather I'd left him in that apartment? Alexander's voice went cold. Let him wake up this morning and realize you never came home? Let him find you? I'd rather you'd told me what you were planning before you did it. You would have said no. Exactly. The word echoed in the large room. Alexander crossed the space between them in 3 steps. He didn't touch her, but Mila felt the heat of him anyway, the controlled violence that lived just beneath his expensive clothes and careful composure. Your stepfather broke your arm, he said quietly. Before that, your ribs. Before that, your collarbone. Before that, he split your lip so badly you needed 4 stitches. You told the ER doctor you walked into a door. Mila's breath caught. I keep records, Mila. Every hospital visit, every excuse, every lie you told because you thought it was safer than the truth. Alexander's jaw tightened. So, no, I didn't ask your permission because I knew what you'd say, and I wasn't going to let him hurt you again while you convinced yourself it wasn't that bad. You don't get to make that choice for me. I already did. Mila stood up. Her legs felt unsteady, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. Then I'm leaving. No, you're not. You can't keep me here. I'm not keeping you anywhere, but if you walk out that door, where will you go? Back to an apartment Raymond might come back to. Back to a job where everyone knows your name and face? Back to a life where you're always looking over your shoulder? That's not your problem. It became my problem the moment I made a promise to your mother. Mila flinched. Don't use her like that. I'm not using her, I'm honoring her. Alexander's voice softened by a fraction. Julia saved my life when she didn't have to, kept secrets that could have gotten her killed, made me swear on everything I had that if you ever needed help, I'd be there. She never told me about you. Because she knew what I was, what being connected to me would mean. He paused. But she also knew that if things got bad enough, you'd need someone who could do things the right way, couldn't fix. And you're that someone? The man who makes people disappear with a phone call? Yes. The honesty was worse than a lie would have been. Mila sank back down onto the bed. Her casted arm felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What happens now? You stay here until we're certain Raymond isn't coming back. You heal. You figure out what you want to do next. Alexander moved to the window, his back to her. After that, you're free to leave. I'll set you up with a new apartment, new identity if you want it. Enough money to start over somewhere he'll never find you. And what do you want in return? I told you last night, nothing you're not willing to give. That's not an answer either. Alexander turned to look at her. The morning light cut across his face, sharp and unforgiving, and Mila saw something in his expression that made her chest tighten for reasons she couldn't name. I want you safe, he said simply. That's all. Mila wanted to believe him, wanted to think that men like Alexander Russo, men who ran criminal empires and made people disappear, could want something without taking everything in return. But she'd spent 3 years with Raymond. She knew what men's promises were worth. How long? She asked. However long it takes. That's not a week, maybe 2. Alexander's expression hardened again. Then you can go back to your life. Or start a new one. Your choice. It wasn't a choice, it was an ultimatum wrapped in expensive silk, but an ultimatum all the same. Mila looked down at her purple cast, at the borrowed clothes she was wearing, at the bedroom that cost more than she'd earn in a decade of 12-hour shifts. Okay, she whispered. Alexander nodded once. Helen will show you around, the grounds, the house, wherever you want to go. There are guards, but they won't bother you. Guards. For your protection. Or to make sure I don't leave. Both. At least he was honest about it. Dinner is at 7. You don't have to join me if you don't want to. He left before she could respond. The door clicked shut, and Mila was alone again in the too big bedroom with its too soft bed and its view of gardens that looked like something out of a dream. Except dreams didn't have guards, and they didn't have men like Alexander Russo, who looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. Mila spent the rest of the morning exploring. Helen gave her the tour with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, though Mila suspected most of Alexander's guests didn't arrive at 3 in the morning with broken arms and soaking wet clothes. The estate was massive. 3 floors, 26 rooms, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves and leather chairs that looked 100 years old. A gym, a pool, indoor and outdoor, a dining room with a table that could seat 30. Hallways lined with artwork Mila was afraid to look at too closely because she'd probably recognize the names and realize she was standing next to something worth more than her life. The kitchen alone was bigger than her apartment. Mr. Russo rarely uses most of these spaces, Helen said as they walked through a sitting room decorated in cream and gold. But he likes to have them available. In case of what? Helen's expression didn't change. In case they're needed. They ended up in the library. Mila ran her good hand along the spines of books, first editions, leather-bound, the kind that belonged in museums, and tried not to think about the fact that she was trapped in a stranger's house pretending this was normal. "You can read anything you like," Helen said. "Mr. Russo doesn't mind." "Does Mr. Russo mind anything?" The question came out sharper than Mila intended, but Helen just smiled slightly. "He minds when people aren't honest with him. And if I was honest? If I told him I wanted to leave right now, then he'd let you go." Helen met her eyes. "But you wouldn't make it home. Raymond Donovan may be missing, but there are other people who'd be very interested in knowing that Alexander Russo is protecting someone." Mila's blood went cold. "What does that mean?" "It means you're safer here than anywhere else right now, whether you believe that or not." Helen left her alone in the library. Mila sank into one of the leather chairs and stared at the ceiling. She'd traded one cage for another. This one had better furniture and no broken bones, but it was still a cage. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. Text message from Lily, her coworker at the hospital. "Girl, where are you? You missed your shift and Dr. Ramos is pissed. Call me." Mila stared at the screen. She'd completely forgotten about work, about the kids in pediatric oncology who knew her by name, who asked for her specifically when they came in for treatments, who drew her pictures and gave her rocks they'd found outside because they knew she collected them. She typed out a response. "Family emergency. I'm okay. Tell Dr. Ramos I'll call tomorrow." Another lie. They came so easily now. Lily responded immediately. "Is this about Ray? Please tell me you finally left that asshole." Mila's thumb hovered over the keyboard. What was she supposed to say? "Yes, I left, and now I'm staying with a Mafia boss who made my stepfather disappear and has guards watching me." "It's complicated. I'll explain later." She put the phone away before Lily could respond again. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Lunch appeared on a tray in her room. Sandwich, soup, fruit she didn't recognize. Mila ate mechanically and stared out the window at gardens where nothing was out of place, where every leaf and petal existed exactly where someone had decided it should be. Control. Everything about this place screamed control. At 6:30, Helen knocked on her door. "Dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. Mr. Russo asked if you'd join him." "What if I say no?" "Then I'll bring your meal up here." No judgment, no pressure, just a simple statement of fact. Mila looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The borrowed clothes were clean but plain. Her hair was a mess. She had bruises under her eyes from not sleeping, and the purple cast on her arm stood out like a neon sign. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd run out of options. "I'll come down," she said. The dining room was smaller than the formal one Helen had shown her earlier, more intimate. A table for 6 instead of 30, set with china that probably cost more than Mila's car. Candles flickered in silver holders. Through the windows, she could see the sun setting over the gardens, painting everything gold and orange. Alexander sat at the head of the table, still in the same clothes from this morning, though he'd put on a jacket. He stood when she entered. "You came. You asked." "I wasn't sure you would." Mila sat down at the other end of the table, as far from him as the space would allow. A man in a dark suit, one of the guards probably, poured wine into her glass without asking if she wanted any. Alexander dismissed him with a gesture. The door closed, and they were alone. "How was your day?" Alexander asked, like this was normal, like they were two people having dinner instead of a captor and captive dancing around the truth. "Surreal, I imagine. Do you do this often, kidnap women and put them up in your house?" "You're not kidnapped." "Then what am I?" Alexander took a sip of wine. His eyes never left hers. "Protected." "From what?" "From men like me." The honesty landed like a slap. Before Mila could respond, the door opened and staff began bringing in food. Salad, soup, a main course that smelled incredible and looked like something from a restaurant Mila couldn't afford to walk past. They set everything out with practiced efficiency and disappeared again. Mila stared at her plate. "You should eat," Alexander said. "I'm not hungry." "You barely touched lunch. How do you—" She stopped. Of course he knew. He probably knew everything. How long she'd slept, how many times she'd checked her phone, how many seconds she'd spent staring out the window wondering if this was real. "I'm not spying on you," Alexander said quietly. "Helen mentioned you didn't eat much. I'm concerned." "Why?" "Because you've been living on adrenaline and fear for 3 years, and now that you're somewhere safe, your body doesn't know how to process it." Mila set down her fork. "You don't know anything about me. I know you graduated nursing school with a 3.9 GPA while working 3 jobs. I know you volunteer at the free clinic on your days off. I know every kid in the pediatric oncology ward asks for you by name because you're the only nurse who remembers their birthdays." Alexander's jaw tightened. "I know Raymond Donovan moved in 6 months after your mother died and spent the next 3 years making you believe you deserved everything he did to you." Mila's vision blurred. "Stop. I know you collect rocks the kids give you and keep them in a jar on your kitchen counter. I know you wanted to be a doctor but couldn't afford med school. I know you're terrified right now, but you're here anyway because some part of you knows I'm telling the truth when I say you're safe." "Stop. I know." "I said stop." Mila's voice cracked. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to act like you know me just because you've been watching me like some kind of stalker." Alexander's expression didn't change. "Maybe, but I've also kept you alive. I didn't ask you to. Your mother did." The words hung in the air between them. Mila pushed back from the table. Her chair scraped against the floor, loud in the quiet room. "I need air. There's a garden. I'll find it myself." She left before he could stop her, her borrowed shoes echoing on marble floors as she navigated hallways she barely remembered from this morning's tour. Finally, she found a door that led outside, onto a terrace overlooking one of the smaller gardens. The air was cold, clean. It smelled like roses and earth, and something else she couldn't name. Mila walked down stone steps, past fountains and flower beds, until she reached a pond at the far edge of the property. The koi fish from this morning drifted beneath the surface, their orange and white bodies catching the last of the sunset. She sat down on a bench and let herself fall apart. Not crying. She was past that. Just a bone-deep exhaustion that made her feel like she might sink into the ground and never get up again. Footsteps on the path behind her. She didn't turn around. "I'm sorry." Alexander's voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. "I shouldn't have said those things. But they're true." "That doesn't mean I should have weaponized them." Mila finally looked at him. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, jacket unbuttoned. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "My mother never mentioned you," she said. "Not once. If you were so important to her, why would she keep that secret?" Alexander moved closer, not invading her space, but close enough that she could see his face clearly in the fading light. "Because your mother knew what I was, even before I did," he said. "She saw a 19-year-old kid bleeding out in her ER and decided he was worth saving. Didn't ask who shot me or why, just patched me up and told me to stop getting into trouble." "But you didn't." "No. The trouble got worse, deeper, until I was running things instead of running from them." Alexander sat down on the bench, leaving space between them. "By the time your mother got sick, I'd become exactly the kind of man she'd hoped I wouldn't be. But she called me anyway, asked me to promise I'd look after you if anything happened." "Why me?" "She had other people. Friends. Family. She knew what Raymond was. Alexander's voice went hard. She saw the warning signs long before you did. Saw him isolating you, controlling you, breaking you down piece by piece. And she knew that when she died, there'd be no one left to protect you from him. Mila's chest tightened. So she came to me, the monster, because she knew I was the only one who could keep you safe from men like him. Alexander paused. Men like me? You're not. Yes, I am. Don't lie to yourself about what I am, just because I'm not hurting you right now. His eyes met hers. I've killed people, Mila. Ordered deaths, destroyed lives, built an empire on violence and fear and blood. The only difference between me and Raymond is that I choose my targets more carefully. The honesty was brutal. Then why are you doing this? Mila whispered. If you're such a monster, why help me? Because your mother saw something in me worth saving, and I owe her. Alexander looked away toward the koi pond. And because when I see you, when I watch you walk through that hospital, smiling at kids who are dying, collecting their rocks and remembering their birthdays and making them believe the world isn't as cruel as it actually is, I remember what it felt like to have someone believe I could be more than what I became. Something in Mila's chest cracked. Alexander! The gunshot shattered the evening quiet like breaking glass. Alexander moved faster than Mila thought possible. 1 second he was sitting beside her, the next he'd pulled her off the bench and behind it, his body covering hers, his hand already reaching for something at his hip. Another shot. The fountain behind them exploded, water and stone fragments spraying across the garden. Stay down, Alexander ordered. His voice was different now, colder. The careful control stripped away to reveal something sharp underneath. Mila's heart slammed against her ribs. What's happening? Quiet. He pulled out his phone, pressed something, and suddenly there were men everywhere. Guards appearing from shadows Mila hadn't even noticed, weapons drawn, moving with military precision toward the tree line where the shots had come from. Alexander pulled her to her feet. We're going inside now. Stay behind me. They ran. Not toward the house, but toward a smaller building Mila hadn't noticed before, half hidden by trees. Alexander keyed in a code, the door opened, and he shoved her inside before following and slamming the door behind them. Darkness. Then emergency lights flickered on, revealing what looked like a safe room. Concrete walls, surveillance monitors, weapons mounted on racks. What the hell? Mila started. Someone just tried to kill me. Alexander was already at the monitors, fingers flying across keyboards, pulling up camera feeds from around the property. Or you, possibly both. Who? If I had to guess. He pulled up a feed showing men in dark clothes moving through the gardens, being intercepted by Alexander's guards. The Varga family. They've been looking for an opening for months. The Varga, Mila's voice caught. You mean the people Helen mentioned? The ones who'd be interested in knowing you're protecting someone? Alexander's jaw tightened. Yes. So I'm not safe here. You said I was safe. You are. He turned to look at her. Safer than anywhere else, but safe doesn't mean untouchable. On the monitors, Mila watched as Alexander's guards subdued 3 men. Zip ties. Hoods. They were dragged off camera toward another building. What are you going to do to them? She asked. Find out who sent them, how they knew you were here, whether there are more coming. And then? Alexander didn't answer. He didn't have to. Mila sank down onto a bench built into the concrete wall. Her casted arm throbbed. Her whole body shook with adrenaline crash. She'd been shot at. Actual bullets. Because she'd gotten in a car with a man she didn't know and let herself believe his promises. I want to go home, she whispered. You can't. I don't care. I want... Mila. Alexander crossed the room and crouched in front of her. Listen to me. Raymond is missing. You're connected to me now. The Vargas know it, which means everyone else will know it soon. If you go home, they'll use you to get to me. And when they're done using you, they'll kill you. So what do I do? You stay. You let me handle this, and you trust that I will keep you alive. I don't know you. No, but your mother did. Alexander's expression softened by a fraction. And she trusted me with the only thing that mattered to her, so trust her judgment, even if you can't trust mine. Mila looked into his eyes. Dark. Unreadable. The eyes of a man who'd just been shot at and looked more annoyed than afraid. This is insane, she said. Yes. I should never have gotten in that car. Probably not. But I did. Yes. Alexander stood. And now we both have to live with that choice. On the monitors, the last of the intruders was being dragged away. The gardens looked peaceful again. Like nothing had happened. Like bullets hadn't just torn through the evening quiet and shattered whatever fragile safety Mila had convinced herself existed here. What happens now? She asked. Alexander pulled out his phone, typed something, sent it. Now, he said quietly, things get complicated. The word settled over Mila like ice water, because she suddenly understood what she'd been trying not to see since the moment she'd gotten in that black SUV. She wasn't a guest here. She was bait. And Alexander Russo, the man her mother had trusted, the man who'd promised to protect her, the man who looked at her like she was something worth saving. He'd just painted a target on her back the size of the entire city. Mila didn't speak to Alexander for 3 days. She stayed in her room with the door locked, eating only what Helen brought on trays, and spent hours staring at the ceiling trying to figure out when exactly she'd stopped being a person and started being a chess piece. The answer kept coming back to the same moment. When she'd taken Alexander's hand and gotten into that SUV, every choice after that had been an illusion. On the 4th morning, Alexander knocked on her door at 6 a.m. "We need to talk." Mila didn't answer. "Mila, open the door. Go away." "I'm not leaving." She pulled the pillow over her head and tried to pretend she was somewhere else. Anywhere else. But his voice cut through the cotton and down like a blade. "The men who came here, the ones who shot at us, they're connected to Victor Varga. He knows you're here. He knows what you mean to me." Mila sat up so fast her vision swam. She crossed the room and yanked open the door. Alexander stood in his hallway fully dressed despite the early hour, looking like he hadn't slept in days. There were new lines around his eyes, a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. "What I mean to you," Mila's voice came out raw. "I don't mean anything to you. I'm a promise you're keeping to a dead woman." "That's not... You used me." The words tasted like ash. "You knew bringing me here would draw attention. You knew people would see it as weakness. You put me in the middle of your war and didn't even have the decency to warn me." Alexander's expression didn't change. "If I'd warned you, you wouldn't have come." Exactly. "And Raymond would still be breaking your bones." Mila stepped back. Her casted arm throbbed, a constant reminder that she'd traded one kind of violence for another. At least with Ray, she'd known the rules. Here, she was drowning in a game she didn't understand. "I want to leave," she said quietly. "No. You can't keep me here. Watch me." Alexander moved into the room, closing the door behind him. "Victor Varga is one of the most dangerous men in this city. He's been trying to take territory from me for 2 years, and he finally found an opening, you. Then let me go. I'll disappear. He'll have no reason to... He'll find you in 48 hours and put a bullet in your head just to prove a point." Alexander's voice went cold. "That's what men like Victor do. They don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They find the thing you care about most and they destroy it." "So what am I supposed to do? Stay here forever? Live in your mansion like some kind of prisoner?" "You're not a prisoner." "Then what am I?" The question hung between them. Alexander's jaw tightened. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he said something that made Mila's blood freeze. "You're the only leverage Victor has against me, which means you're also the only thing keeping this war from turning into a massacre." The words landed like stones. "What? If I retaliate for the attack, if I go after Victor the way I want to, he'll escalate. More bullets, more bodies, civilians caught in the crossfire." Alexander's eyes were flat, dead. "But as long as you're here, as long as he thinks he can get to me through you, he'll be cautious, calculated. It buys me time to handle this the right way." Mila's throat closed. "You're using me as a shield. I'm using you as a deterrent. That's the same thing." "No. A shield gets destroyed. A deterrent keeps everyone alive." Alexander took a step closer. "Including you." "I didn't agree to this." "You agreed when you got in the car." Mila's hand moved before she could stop it. The slap cracked across Alexander's face, loud enough to echo in the large room. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there with a red mark blooming across his cheek and looked at her like he'd expected it. "Feel better?" he asked quietly. "No." "Good. Because feeling better means you're lying to yourself about what this is." Alexander's voice was steady, calm, the kind of calm that came from being slapped before and learning not to react. "I'm keeping you alive, Mila. That's all I can promise you. It's not pretty. It's not fair. But it's the truth. My mother would hate you for this." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. It was gone too fast to tell. "She'd understand," he said. "You didn't know her." "I knew her well enough." Alexander turned toward the door. "Get dressed. We're going out." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes, you are. Unless you want to spend the next 3 months locked in this room wondering if today's the day Victor finds a way past my security." He paused, his hand on the doorknob. "There's a charity gala tonight. High profile. Public. Victor won't make a move there because too many eyes will be watching. You'll be safer in a ballroom full of strangers than you are hiding in here." "Why would you take me to something like that?" "Because hiding you makes you look like a weakness. Showing you off makes you look like a strategy." Alexander's expression hardened. "And right now I need Victor to think I'm 10 steps ahead of him even if I'm only 3. He left before Mila could argue. The door closed, and she was alone again with her thoughts and the growing understanding that everything she'd believed about her situation had been wrong from the start. At noon, Helen appeared with a garment bag. "For tonight," she said, hanging it on the back of the bathroom door. "Mr. Russo thought you might need something appropriate?" Mila stared at the bag. "I'm not going." "Then you'll be the first person to ever successfully say no to him." Helen's tone was neutral, but there was something almost like sympathy in her eyes. "For what it's worth, he's trying to keep you alive. It may not feel like it, but he is. By using me as bait. By making you visible, there's a difference." Helen left. Mila waited until she was gone, then unzipped the garment bag. The dress inside was midnight blue, floor length, with a neckline that would show her collarbones and shoulders. The fabric felt like water. There were shoes to match, heels she'd never be able to walk in, and jewelry that looked real even though it couldn't be. She should refuse. Should lock herself in this room and force Alexander to drag her out kicking and screaming. But what would that prove? That she was still fighting? That she hadn't given up? Or that she was exactly as powerless as she felt? Mila took a shower, put on the dress, did her makeup the way her mother had taught her years ago, enough to look polished, not enough to look like she was trying. Her casted arm ruined the effect, purple and bulky against the elegant dress, but there was nothing she could do about that. At 6:30, Alexander knocked again. Mila opened the door. He changed into a tuxedo that fit him like a weapon. Black jacket, black tie, white shirt that made his dark eyes look even darker. He'd shaved. His hair was swept back. He looked like money, and danger had a child and named it power. His eyes swept over her once. Something shifted in his expression. "You look—" He stopped. "Like bait?" Mila's voice was sharp. "Beautiful." The word came out quiet, rough, like it hurt to say. "You look beautiful." Mila hated that the compliment landed, hated that some stupid part of her wanted to hear it again. "Let's get this over with," she said. The gala was being held downtown at the Meridian Hotel, a building so expensive Mila had only ever seen it from the outside. Alexander's driver navigated through evening traffic while Mila sat in silence, watching the city slide past through tinted windows. "There are rules," Alexander said finally. "Of course there are. You stay within my sight at all times. You don't wander off. You don't talk to anyone I don't introduce you to first." He paused. "And if Victor Varga approaches you, you smile and say nothing. Understand?" "What if I don't want to smile?" "Then fake it. You've had plenty of practice." The comment was meant to sting. It worked. They pulled up to the hotel entrance where a red carpet stretched from the street to the doors. Cameras flashed. People in expensive clothes milled around, laughing and drinking champagne like the world wasn't on fire. Alexander got out first. Then he offered his hand. Mila hesitated. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he said quietly. She took his hand. The cameras exploded. Flash after flash after flash, bright enough to blind. Mila felt Alexander's hand on her lower back, steady and warm. guiding her forward through the crowd. People stared, whispered. She caught fragments of conversation. That's her. Russo's new. Where did he find? Inside was worse. The ballroom was massive. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, a string quartet playing something classical in the corner. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and appetizers that probably cost more per bite than Mila made in an hour. Everyone stopped talking when they entered. Then the whispers started again, louder this time, spreading through the room like wildfire. They're staring, Mila whispered. Let them. Alexander's hand stayed on her back. You're the most interesting person here. I'm the most out-of-place person here. Same thing. They moved through the crowd. Alexander introduced her to people whose names Mila forgot immediately. Business associates, politicians, a judge who smiled too wide and shook her hand too long. Everyone treated Alexander with a mixture of respect and fear that made Mila's skin crawl. This was his world, power built on violence and wrapped in expensive suits, and she was standing right in the middle of it. They were halfway through their second circuit of the room when Mila saw him. The man was tall, older than Alexander by maybe 10 years, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile genuinely decades ago. He wore a tuxedo identical to Alexander's, but somehow it looked different on him, sharper, more predatory. He was watching her. That's Victor Varga, Alexander said quietly. He'd followed her gaze. Don't react. I'm not. Victor started walking toward them. Alexander's hand tightened on Mila's back. Not painful, but firm. A warning. Mr. Russo. Victor's voice was smooth, cultured. The accent was European, Russian maybe, or somewhere nearby. What a surprise to see you here. Victor? Alexander's tone was neutral. I didn't know you were on the guest list. Last-minute addition. The mayor and I are old friends. Victor's eyes slid to Mila. And who is this lovely creature? Mila Bennett, my guest for the evening. Charmed. Victor took Mila's hand and kissed it. His lips were cold. Miss Bennett, how did you meet our dear Alexander? Mila opened her mouth, closed it. Alexander had said to smile and say nothing, but the silence felt like drowning. Through mutual friends, she managed finally. Mutual friends. Victor's smile widened. How delightfully vague. Tell me, Miss Bennett, do you know what your companion does for a living? Victor. Alexander's voice dropped 20 degrees. We're done here. Are we? I was just getting to know Miss Bennett. She seems far too sweet to be involved with a man like you. Victor leaned closer to Mila. His breath smelled like whiskey and something medicinal underneath. Has he told you what he does to people who cross him? The creative ways he solves problems? Mila's heart hammered against her ribs. Back off, Alexander said quietly. Or what? You'll make a scene at a charity gala? In front of all these witnesses? Victor laughed. You've gotten soft, Alexander. Bringing a pretty nurse to a war zone. Everyone here can see it. I said back off. But Victor wasn't looking at Alexander anymore. He was looking at Mila, his eyes cold and calculating, like he was adding up numbers in his head. Your mother was Julia Bennett, he said suddenly. Nurse at Cedar Heights. Died 3 years ago of ovarian cancer. Mila's blood went cold. How do you... I know everything about you, Miss Bennett. Your address, your job, the fact that you've been living with a stepfather who likes to use his fists. Victor's smile turned cruel. I also know that Raymond Donovan disappeared 4 days ago, right around the time you showed up at Alexander's estate. The room tilted. That's enough, Alexander said. His voice was dangerous now, low, the kind of voice that preceded violence. But Victor wasn't finished. Did you know, he said to Mila, his eyes never leaving hers, that your mother's cancer treatment was paid for by a shell corporation registered to Alexander Russo? Every doctor's visit, every round of chemotherapy, every experimental treatment that didn't work, all of it funded by the man standing next to you. Mila turned to look at Alexander. His expression was stone. Is that true? She whispered. He didn't answer. Of course it's true, Victor continued. Alexander's been obsessed with your family for years, watching you, protecting you from a distance. waiting for the perfect moment to collect on the debt your mother owed him. That's not, Alexander started. Isn't it? Victor's smile was sharp as broken glass. You made Julia a promise, but not the one you told Miss Bennet about. You promised to keep her daughter safe in exchange for her silence about something far more interesting. The world was spinning now. Mila couldn't breathe. What is he talking about? She asked Alexander. Alexander's jaw was so tight it looked like it might crack. Victor, walk away, now. Why? So you can keep lying to her? Victor turned back to Mila. Your mother didn't save Alexander's life, Miss Bennet. She covered up a murder. The words landed like explosions. What? 15 years ago, Alexander Russo killed a man in cold blood in the emergency room at Cedar Heights. Shot him twice in the chest while he was handcuffed to a gurney. Your mother was the attending nurse. She witnessed everything. Victor paused. And she helped him hide the body. Mila's legs stopped working. She would have fallen if Alexander hadn't caught her. That's a lie, Alexander said. His voice was steel. Victor, I swear to... Ussi. You swear to what? Kill me at a charity gala? Victor laughed. Your mother made a choice, Miss Bennet. She could have reported what she saw. Could have ended Alexander's career before it started. Instead, she took his money and kept her mouth shut. And when the cancer came, she had the audacity to ask for more. Stop talking. Alexander's hand was on Mila's arm now, steady despite the rage in his voice. Mila, don't listen to him. He's... Tell her, Victor interrupted. Tell her who that man was, the one you killed, the one her mother helped you bury. Alexander's eyes closed, just for a second, but it was enough. His name was Marcus Donovan, Victor said softly. Raymond's older brother. The floor disappeared. Mila pulled away from Alexander like he'd burned her. Her vision swam. Her casted arm throbbed in time with her heartbeat. No, she whispered. Yes. Victor's smile was victorious. Raymond never knew what happened to his brother. Thought he'd run off, disappeared. But the truth is, Alexander Russo put 2 bullets in Marcus's chest, and your mother helped him get away with it. And when Raymond started dating Julia's daughter years later, Alexander couldn't touch him without risking exposure. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Ray's last name, Donovan. She'd never thought about it, never connected it to anything because why would she? But Alexander had known. Alexander had known the entire time. You let him hurt me, Mila said. Her voice sounded wrong, distant, like it belonged to someone else. You watched for 18 months while Ray broke my bones, and you didn't stop him because if you did, he'd find out what you did to his brother. Mila, you used my mother's guilt to control her, made her take money to pay for treatment so she'd stay silent, and when she died, you used me the same way. A promise to protect me that was really just, what? Insurance? Making sure Raymond never found out the truth? Alexander's expression cracked. That's not... Is it true? Mila's voice was loud enough to turn heads now. People were staring, whispering. Did you kill Raymond's brother? Did my mother help you cover it up? Alexander's silence was the only answer she needed. Mila felt something inside her shatter. Every lie, every promise, every moment she'd let herself believe he was different from Ray, that his violence was somehow justified because he wrapped it in expensive suits and called it protection. Stay away from me, she whispered. She turned and walked. Not toward the exit. Her legs wouldn't carry her that far, just away. Through the crowd of people who parted like water, their faces blurring together into a mass of judgment and curiosity and pity. She found a side door, pushed through it, stumbled into a hallway lined with service corridors and staff-only signs. Her breath came in gasps. The dress was too tight. The room was too hot. Her casted arm felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Behind her, she heard Alexander calling her name. She ran, down the hallway, around a corner, through a door that led to a stairwell. Her heels clicked on concrete steps as she descended, 1 floor, 2 floors, until she hit the bottom and burst out into an underground parking garage. The air was cold, stale, smelled like exhaust and concrete. Mila leaned against a pillar and tried to remember how to breathe. Her mother had covered up a murder, had taken blood money to pay for cancer treatment, had died carrying a secret that made Mila's entire life make sense in the worst possible way. And Alexander. Footsteps echoed in the garage. Mila looked up, It wasn't Alexander. 3 men emerged from the shadows. Dark suits, cold eyes, the kind of men who knew how to hurt people efficiently. "Miss Bennett," the one in front smiled. "Mr. Varga would like a word." Mila's heart stopped. She tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Tried to scream, but her throat closed around the sound. The men moved fast. One grabbed her good arm, another clamped a hand over her mouth. The third pulled out a phone and made a call. "We have her!" Mila thrashed, kicked, bit down on the hand covering her mouth hard enough to taste blood. The man cursed and pulled back. For 1 second, her mouth was free. "Alexander!" The scream echoed through the parking garage like a gunshot. Then something hit her head, and the world went black. When Mila woke up, she was in a different kind of cage. The room was small, concrete walls, no windows. A single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back, the plastic cutting into her wrists. Her casted arms screamed with pain from the awkward angle. She was sitting in a metal chair. Her feet were tied to the legs. Across from her, Victor Varga sat in an identical chair, watching her with the expression of a man who'd just won a bet. "Good evening, Miss Bennett. I apologize for the accommodations. Unfortunately, Mr. Russo has made it somewhat difficult to have a civilized conversation." Mila's mouth was dry. Her head pounded where she'd been hit. "Where am I?" "Somewhere safe. Or unsafe, depending on your perspective." Victor leaned forward. "I'm going to ask you some questions. How you answer them will determine what happens next." "I don't know anything." "Perhaps. But Alexander Russo cares about you enough to bring you to a public event. That suggests you have value." Victor's smile was cold. "So let's find out exactly how much you're worth." Mila's vision blurred. She tried to pull against the zip ties, but they only cut deeper. "He'll find me," she said. Her voice shook. Alexander will do nothing," Victor interrupted. "Because if he comes for you, I'll put a bullet in your head and leave your body on his doorstep. But if he stays away, if he backs down from our little territorial dispute, then perhaps you get to live." "Why are you doing this?" "Because men like Alexander Russo only understand one language: power, control, loss." Victor stood and walked to the door. "You, Miss Bennett, are his loss. The thing he couldn't protect. The weakness everyone always suspected was there." He opened the door, paused. "I'll give him 24 hours to make his choice. You or his empire." Victor smiled. "Let's see which one he picks." The door closed. The lock clicked. And Mila was alone in the dark, with zip ties cutting into her wrists, and the growing understanding that she'd been wrong about everything. She wasn't bait. She wasn't a deterrent. She was collateral damage in a war she'd never wanted to be part of. And the man who'd promised to protect her had been the one who'd signed her death warrant the moment he'd opened that car door and offered her his hand. Outside, she heard voices. Footsteps. The sound of someone loading a gun. 24 hours. That's all she had left, unless she found a way to save herself. Mila counted her breaths in the dark. 1, 2, 3. The zip ties cut deeper with every inhale. Her wrists were slick with something, sweat or blood, she couldn't tell. The concrete floor beneath her feet was cold enough that she'd lost feeling in her toes somewhere around breath 253. She'd stopped screaming after the first hour. No one came, no one cared. The bare bulb overhead flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Mila's heart kicked against her ribs. She forced herself to think, to focus. She was a nurse. She understood anatomy, understood leverage and pressure points and how the human body could be manipulated if you knew where to push. The zip ties were tight, but they were plastic. Plastic could break if you applied enough force at the right angle. Mila pressed her back against the metal chair and pulled her arms down as hard as she could while simultaneously jerking them apart. The plastic cut deeper. Pain screamed up her forearms. Her casted arm felt like it was being torn off at the shoulder. She did it again. Again. On the fourth try, something gave. Not the zip tie. The cast. The plaster cracked along a stress line she'd felt forming since Victor's men had grabbed her. Mila gasped and kept pulling. The cast splintered further. Sharp edges cut into her skin, but beneath it, her arm had more flexibility now, more room to twist. She changed her angle. Instead of pulling apart, she brought her wrists together and rotated them in opposite directions. The zip tie bit into bone. Blood ran down her palms, making her grip slippery. The plastic snapped. Mila's hands came free so suddenly she nearly fell forward out of the chair. She caught herself, breathing hard, her vision swimming even in the darkness. Her wrists were raw. The cast on her left arm was destroyed, hanging in pieces from her elbow. The broken bone underneath throbbed with each heartbeat, unstabilized now, grinding against itself. She didn't care. Mila reached down and fumbled with the zip ties around her ankles. Her fingers were numb, clumsy. It took 3 tries to find the locking mechanism, and another 2 minutes of blind manipulation before the plastic finally gave. She stood, her legs nearly collapsed. She grabbed the chair for support and waited for the dizziness to pass. Then she moved toward where she remembered the door being. Her hands found concrete wall. She traced it left until her fingers hit metal. The door. She felt for a handle and found a lock instead. Industrial. The kind that needed a key from both sides. Mila pressed her ear against the cold metal and listened. Voices. Distant. Male. Speaking a language she didn't recognize. Russian, maybe, like Victor's accent. She needed a weapon, needed a plan, needed anything except this room and her bare hands and a broken arm that screamed with every movement. She turned and felt her way back into the room. Her fingers traced the chair, the walls. Nothing. Just concrete and metal, and her foot hit something. Mila crouched down and felt around. A bucket, plastic, empty except for a few inches of stale water at the bottom. Not a weapon, but maybe a tool. She picked it up and moved back to the door. Positioned herself to the left side, her back against the wall, the bucket raised over her head with her good arm. Then she screamed. "Help! Someone help me!" The voices outside stopped. Footsteps. Getting closer. Mila's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She tightened her grip on the bucket and held her breath. The lock clicked. The door swung open. A man stepped through, silhouetted by the dim light from the hallway. He was holding a gun low at his side, his other hand reaching for a light switch. Mila brought the bucket down on his head with everything she had. The plastic connected with a hollow thud. The man staggered. Mila hit him again, harder. The bucket cracked. Water splashed across them both. The man dropped to one knee, the gun clattering from his grip. Mila dove for it. Her broken arm screamed as she hit the concrete floor. Her fingers closed around cold metal. She rolled onto her back and pointed the gun at the man's face. He was younger than she'd expected. Maybe 30. Blood ran from a gash above his eyebrow where the bucket had connected. He said something in Russian, reached for his belt. Mila pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Safety. The gun had a safety. The man lunged. Mila threw the gun at his face and scrambled backward. Her hand found the broken bucket. She swung it like a club, catching him across the jaw. He went down hard, his head bouncing off the concrete. He didn't get up. Mila grabbed the gun again. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. She fumbled with the safety until something clicked, then pointed it at the man on the floor. He wasn't moving. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck. Pulse. Still alive. Mila took his phone from his pocket, locked. She tried his thumb on the scanner. It worked. 3 missed calls from a contact labeled VV, Victor Varga, and 1 text message sent 20 minutes ago. Russo rejected the offer. Kill her. Mila's vision blurred. 24 hours. Victor had said 24 hours, but that had been a lie. Alexander had already made his choice, and Mila had been dead the moment Victor's men put her in that chair. She looked at the unconscious man on the floor, at the gun in her hand, at the open door leading to a hallway she didn't recognize. Alexander had chosen his empire, so Mila would choose herself. She stepped over the unconscious guard and moved into the hallway. The lighting was dim, industrial. This wasn't a house. It was a warehouse or factory, something with concrete floors and exposed pipes running along the ceiling. Voices echoed from somewhere to her left, footsteps to her right. Mila went right. She moved as quietly as she could in the dress and heels from the gala. The fabric whispered with each step. Her broken arm hung useless at her side, still wrapped in fragments of purple plaster. She passed a door, another, a third, all closed. She tried the 4th, and it opened into a storage room filled with crates. No windows. No exit. Behind her, someone shouted in Russian. They'd found the guard. Mila ran. The hallway branched. She took the left fork and found herself in a larger space, a loading bay with roll-up doors and a concrete ramp leading up to street level. Through the small window in one of the doors, she could see darkness. Night. No streetlights. She tried the door, locked from the outside. Footsteps pounded behind her, getting closer. Mila looked around desperately. There, a fire escape ladder leading up to a catwalk that ran along the ceiling. She shoved the gun into the waistband of her dress and grabbed the first rung. Pain exploded through her broken arm as she pulled herself up. She bit down on a scream and kept climbing. 1 rung, 2, 3. Her dress caught on something and tore. She didn't stop. She reached the catwalk just as 3 men burst into the loading bay below. Mila pressed herself flat against the metal grating and held her breath. The men spread out. One checked the doors, another examined the ladder she'd just climbed. The third pulled out a phone and made a call. "She's not here. Maybe she went—" A gunshot cut through his words, but no one was shooting at her. The men below dropped their weapons and raised their hands. "Don't move." The voice came from the entrance to the loading bay. Male, cold, familiar. Alexander stepped into view. He wasn't alone. 6 men flanked him, all armed, all wearing the kind of tactical gear that said they knew how to use the weapons they carried. Alexander himself held a pistol in one hand, pointed at the nearest of Victor's guards. "Where is she?" Alexander's voice was flat. Dead. The voice of a man who'd already decided how this ended. "We don't know. She escaped." Alexander shot him. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The man dropped, clutching his leg, screaming. "Wrong answer." Alexander moved to the second guard. "Where is she?" "Victor has her. He moved her an hour ago." Another shot. This one hit the wall 6 inches from the guard's head. "Try again." "I swear she was here, but she got out of the room and—" Alexander pressed the gun against the man's forehead. "Alexander, wait." Mila's voice echoed from the catwalk above. Every head turned. Alexander looked up, and something cracked in his expression. Relief, rage, something Mila couldn't name. "Mila." She climbed down the ladder with one hand, her broken arm pressed against her chest. Her legs shook so badly she nearly fell twice. When she reached the bottom, Alexander was there. He caught her before she hit the ground. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her, checking for injuries. They stopped when they found her wrists, raw and bleeding from the zip ties. His jaw went tight. Who did this? "It doesn't matter. It matters." Alexander looked at his men. "Secure them, all 3. No one leaves alive without my permission." "Wait." Mila grabbed his arm. "Where's Victor?" "Not here. We hit 2 of his locations before this one." Alexander's eyes were hard. "He's running. Has been since I turned down his deal." "The deal was fake." Mila pulled out the phone she'd taken from the guard, showed him the text message. "He was going to kill me anyway." Alexander read the message. Something cold and terrible moved across his face. "Get her out of here," he told one of his men. "Take her back to the estate, maximum security. No one gets in or out until I return." "No." Mila's voice was stronger than she felt. "I'm not going back to that house. I'm not going back to being your prisoner." "Mila, you chose." The words came out broken, raw. "Victor gave you an ultimatum, and you chose your empire over me. That text is proof." "That text is a lie." Alexander's voice was low, dangerous. "Victor never gave me 24 hours. He called 3 hours after he took you and demanded I turn over half my territory. When I refused, he said you were already dead." Mila's breath caught. "Then why am I alive?" "Because he's a sadist who wanted me to suffer before he killed you." Alexander moved closer. "I've been burning through his operations all night trying to find you. I wasn't choosing my empire, Mila. I was choosing to tear his apart." The words should have made her feel better. They didn't. "You lied to me," she said quietly. "About my mother. About Raymond's brother. About everything." "Yes." "Why?" "Because the truth would have destroyed you." Alexander's expression was stone. "Your mother made a choice 15 years ago. She saw me kill a man who would have killed dozens more if he'd lived. Marcus Donovan was a monster. He ran trafficking rings, sold children. Your mother knew it. That's why she helped me." "That's not—" "She took the money because she needed it. Because she was sick and terrified, and I was the only one offering a way out. But she didn't sell her soul, Mila. She saved it. Alexander's voice softened. And she spent the rest of her life making sure you'd never have to make that kind of choice. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you would have blamed yourself for her decisions, would have carried her guilt like you've been carrying Raymond's violence. He paused. And because I couldn't risk Raymond finding out before I dealt with him. So you let him hurt me. I had surveillance on you every minute. If he'd gone too far, if I thought he'd actually kill you, I would have ended it. Alexander's jaw tightened. But I needed him to disappear cleanly. No body, no investigation, no trail back to you or your mother's secret. That took time. Mila wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to do anything except stand here bleeding and exhausted while he explained why her pain had been acceptable collateral in his chess game. But she was so tired. "Where's Raymond now?" she asked. "Gone. Permanently." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you need." Behind them, one of Alexander's men cleared his throat. "Sir, we need to move. Victor will know we hit this location soon." Alexander nodded. He looked at Mila. "Come back to the estate. Let me finish this. Then you can leave if you want. I won't stop you." "Why should I believe you?" "Because I have nothing left to gain by lying to you." Alexander's expression was empty. "Victor exposed everything. Your mother's secret. Mine. The only leverage I had was keeping you safe and not knowing why. Now you know. So if you want to walk away, walk. But do it after I've made sure Victor can't touch you." Mila looked at the 3 guards zip-tied on the floor, at Alexander's men with their tactical gear and cold eyes, at the man standing in front of her who'd killed for her mother and lied for her and was now offering her exactly what she'd wanted from the beginning, a choice. "If I come back," she said slowly, "I'm not your prisoner, not your responsibility, not your debt to my mother." "Then what are you?" "I don't know yet." Mila met his eyes. "But I get to decide. Not you, not Victor, me." Alexander studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay." The drive back to the estate took 40 minutes. Mila sat in the back of an SUV wrapped in someone's jacket, her broken arm cradled against her chest, watching the city blur past through bulletproof glass. Alexander sat beside her in silence. When they pulled through the gates, Helen was waiting at the entrance. She took one look at Mila and her expression crumbled. "Miss Bennett, I need a doctor," Mila said quietly. "The cast is destroyed." "Of course. Dr. Morrison is already on his way." They moved through the house in a quiet procession. Mila, Helen, Alexander, and 3 guards who positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the halls. Back to the same bedroom where this had all started. The same canopy bed and floor-to-ceiling windows and view of gardens that looked peaceful in the moonlight. Dr. Morrison arrived within 20 minutes. He examined Mila's arm in silence, his expression growing more concerned with each touch. "The bone shifted when the cast broke," he said finally. "It needs to be reset, properly this time. I'll need to sedate you." "No sedation." "Miss Bennett?" "No, sedation." Mila's voice was firm. "Just do it." Dr. Morrison looked at Alexander. Alexander nodded. "Give her something for the pain, at least." "Fine." The pill Dr. Morrison handed her was small and white. Mila swallowed it dry and lay back on the bed. "This is going to hurt," the doctor warned. "I know." It hurt worse than anything Mila had ever experienced. Worse than when Ray had broken it the first time. Worse than the zip ties. Worse than the fear and exhaustion and every broken piece of her life coming apart all at once. She didn't scream. She bit down on a towel Helen provided and let the pain wash over her in waves while Dr. Morrison manipulated bone back into alignment. Alexander stood by the window, his back to her, his hands clenched into fists. When it was over, Mila's arm was wrapped in a new cast. White, this time. Clean, professional. 6 weeks, Dr. Morrison said. No exceptions, and I want to see you every 3 days to monitor for complications. He left. Helen disappeared to get food and water. Mila and Alexander were alone. "You didn't have to stay," Mila said. Her voice was hoarse from the pain. "Yes, I did." "Why?" Alexander turned from the window. He looked exhausted. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before, and his shirt was stained with something dark near the collar. Because I failed you, he said simply. I promised your mother I'd keep you safe, and instead I put you in the middle of a war. Let Victor take you. Let him hurt you. You came for me. After you'd already saved yourself. Something like pride flickered across his expression. You broke out of a locked room, knocked out a trained guard, and stole his weapon. Most people would have waited for rescue. I'm not most people. No, you're not. The words hung between them. Mila shifted on the bed, trying to find a position where her arm didn't throb. What happens now with Victor? He's made his move. Now I make mine. Alexander's voice went cold. By sunrise, he'll have nothing left. No territory, no men, no leverage. And then I'll deal with him personally. You're going to kill him. Yes. No hesitation, no remorse. Mila should have been horrified, should have argued or tried to talk him out of it, or done something that proved she was still the person who'd walked into that hospital every day believing the world could be saved one kid at a time. But she just felt tired. Okay, she whispered. Alexander's expression shifted. You're not going to try to stop me? Would it matter if I did? No. Then okay. He moved closer, sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her. Mila, I need you to understand something. The person I am, the things I do, they don't go away because you're here. I can't be someone different just because you make me want to be. I'm not asking you to be. Then what are you asking? Mila looked at him. Really looked. At the exhaustion in his eyes and the blood on his shirt and the way his hands shook slightly, even though his voice stayed steady. I'm asking you to stop treating me like I'm fragile, she said. I broke out of that room on my own. I survived 3 years with Raymond. I'm still here. So stop protecting me from the truth about who you are and let me decide if I can handle it. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Your mother was right about you. What did she say? That you were stronger than anyone gave you credit for. That if I ever underestimated you, I'd regret it. His mouth curved slightly. I should have listened. Helen knocked on the door. She entered carrying a tray with soup and bread and water, set it on the table near the window. Eat, she told Mila. Doctor's orders. She left. Mila ate because her body demanded it. The soup was good, warm. The bread was fresh enough that it fell apart in her hands. Alexander watched her in silence. Where will you go? He asked finally. After, when this is over. I don't know. Mila set down her spoon. Maybe nowhere. Maybe somewhere new. Maybe I'll just drive until I run out of road. You deserve better than running. So do you. The words surprised them both. Alexander stood, moved back to the window. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Why? Because Victor knows he's lost, and men like him don't lose gracefully. Alexander's reflection in the glass was hard, cold. He'll make one last move, something desperate, something designed to hurt me as badly as possible before I end him. What could he possibly do? You said he has nothing left. Alexander turned to look at her. His eyes were dark. He has you. The words settled over Mila like ice. I'm here, behind your security, behind guards and gates, and it won't matter. Victor spent 15 years building his reputation on being unpredictable, on doing things no one else would consider. Alexander's jaw tightened. If he thinks he can get to you one more time, he will. And next time, I might not find you in time. So what do? We end this, tonight. How? Alexander pulled out his phone, typed something, sent it. I'm going to give Victor exactly what he wants. Your territory? No. Alexander looked at her. You. Mila's heart stopped. What? I'm going to tell him you're leaving, that you're done with me, that you'll be at the house alone while I meet with my associates across town. Alexander's voice was steady, calm. And when he comes for you, I'll be waiting. That's insane. You're using me as bait again. I'm using you as the trigger on a trap. He moved closer. But this time you know exactly what's happening. This time you choose. And if I say no, then we do this the slow way. Months of hunting him through the shadows while you look over your shoulder every day wondering if today's the day he finds you. Mila's hands shook. She set down the water glass before she could drop it. When? 3 hours. I need time to position my men, to make sure every exit is covered and every sight line is clear. Alexander paused. You'll be in danger for maybe 10 minutes. After that, it's over. 10 minutes. Yes. Mila thought about the room she'd escaped from, the zip ties, the text message that said kill her, the gun in her hand and the man on the floor who hadn't gotten up. She thought about Raymond and her mother and the secret that had cost them both everything. She thought about Alexander Russo, who'd made a promise 15 years ago and had spent the time since trying to keep it in the most broken way possible. And she thought about herself. Mila Bennett, pediatric oncology nurse who collected rocks from dying children and believed the world could be saved one person at a time. That woman was gone. Maybe she'd died in the parking garage at the Meridian Hotel. Maybe in the locked room with the zip ties. Maybe years ago, the first time Ray had raised his fist. The woman sitting here now was someone different. Someone who'd learned that monsters weren't always the ones with guns. Sometimes they were the ones who made you believe you deserved the violence. And sometimes the only way to survive them was to become something just as dangerous. Okay, Mila said quietly. Let's end this. Alexander's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes that looked almost like relief. 3 hours, he said. Get some rest. You'll need it. He left. The door closed, and Mila sat alone in the too-big bedroom with her newly casted arm and her torn dress, and the growing understanding that tonight would answer the only question that really mattered. Was she the woman Alexander had saved, or the woman who'd saved herself? In 3 hours, she'd find out. Mila didn't sleep. She lay on top of the covers in borrowed clothes for the second time in a week, and watched the clock on the nightstand count down the minutes until she became bait again. Except this time, she knew exactly what she was walking into. 2 hours and 47 minutes, 2 hours and 33, 2 hours and 9. At the 2-hour mark, Helen knocked softly and entered carrying a bag. Mr. Russo asked me to give you these. Inside was a pair of jeans, a dark sweater, sneakers that actually fit, and at the bottom, wrapped in black cloth, was a gun. Mila picked it up. The metal was cold, heavy. She checked the safety the way the guard had taught her by accident when she'd stolen his weapon. Does he think I'll need this? She asked. Helen's expression was carefully neutral. Mr. Russo thinks you should have options. She left. Mila changed into the clothes. They fit perfectly, which meant Alexander had known her sizes without asking. Another reminder that he'd been watching her long before that rainy night outside the hospital. She tucked the gun into the waistband of the jeans and pulled the sweater over it. 1 hour and 42 minutes. Alexander appeared at the 1-hour mark exactly. He'd changed too. Black tactical gear, Kevlar vest, a weapon holstered at his hip and another strapped to his thigh. He looked like what he was, a man preparing for war. My men are in position, he said without preamble. 6 inside the house in hidden positions, another 12 outside covering every entrance. Victor won't get within 50 feet of you without us knowing. And if he does? He won't. Alexander's voice was flat, certain. But if something goes wrong, there's a panic room behind the bookshelf in the library. Code is 1987. Lock yourself inside and don't come out until I come for you. 1987. Can you shoot? He nodded at the gun she was carrying. I pulled the trigger once. Nothing happened because the safety was on. Show me. Mila pulled out the gun. Alexander moved behind her, his hands covering hers, adjusting her grip. His breath was warm against her ear. Feet shoulder-width apart, both hands on the grip. Don't lock your elbows. He guided her through the motion. Safety's here. Flip it down. Aim center mass. Squeeze. Don't pull. He stepped back. Mila aimed at the far wall, her finger resting alongside the trigger guard the way he'd shown her. If Victor gets past my men, Alexander said quietly, you shoot him. Don't hesitate. Don't think. Just shoot until he stops moving. Okay? Mila. He moved in front of her. I need you to understand something. If this goes wrong, if Victor gets to you before I can stop him, I won't be gentle about what comes next. I won't follow rules or show mercy or care about anything except making sure he suffers for every second you were afraid. I know. And you're okay with that? Mila thought about the zip ties, the locked room, the text message that had condemned her to death. She thought about Raymond and her mother and every lie that had led to this moment. "Yes," she said. "I'm okay with that." Alexander studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded and pulled out his phone. "It's time. I'm sending the message to Victor now." He typed quickly. Hit send. The message was simple. "She's leaving. Tonight. If you want her, the house will be empty in 30 minutes. I'll be across town. Come alone or don't come at all." "Will he believe it?" Mila asked. "He'll want to believe it. That's enough." Alexander pocketed his phone. "Stay in this room until you hear gunfire. Then go to the library, the panic room. Don't try to fight. Don't try to help. Just survive." "What about you?" "I'll be close. Watching." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Mila, if something happens to me, don't." "If something happens," he continued, voice steady, "Helen has instructions, money, documents, everything you need to disappear and start over somewhere. Victor's people will never find you." "Alexander, your mother asked me to keep you safe. If I can't do that alive, I'll do it dead." He met her eyes. "Promise me you'll run if it comes to that." Mila wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wouldn't run, wouldn't leave, wouldn't let him die for her the way her mother had died, keeping secrets for him. But the words stuck in her throat. "I promise," she lied. Alexander knew it was a lie. She could see it in his eyes, but he nodded anyway and left the room without another word. The door clicked shut. Mila was alone. She checked the gun again. Safety off. Round in the chamber, her hands were steadier than she'd expected. 27 minutes. She sat on the edge of the bed and counted her breaths. At minute 23, the lights in the house went out. Not just her room, everything. The hallway outside went dark. Through the windows, she saw the garden lights die one by one. Mila's heart kicked into overdrive. This wasn't part of the plan. Alexander had said his men would be watching, that Victor wouldn't get close. But cutting the power meant Victor was already here. Mila grabbed the gun and moved to the door, pressed her ear against it, and listened. Silence. Then, footsteps. Multiple sets, moving through the house with practiced quiet. She eased the door open a crack. The hallway was pitch black. Emergency lighting should have kicked in. The fact that it hadn't meant someone had disabled the backup system too. Victor had come prepared. Mila slipped out of the room and moved toward the staircase, her sneakers silent on marble floors. She needed to get to the library, to the panic room. That was the plan. But halfway down the hall, she heard voices. "Second floor clear. Check the bedrooms. Russo's men are outside. We have maybe 5 minutes." They were between her and the stairs. Mila reversed direction and headed toward the other end of the hallway. There was a servant's staircase back there, narrow and steep, that led down to the kitchen. She was 3 steps from it when a hand clamped over her mouth. Mila tried to scream, tried to bring the gun up, but the hand was too strong, the arm around her waist too tight. "Don't." The voice was male, familiar. "It's Marcus." One of Alexander's men. She'd seen him during the ride back from the warehouse. He released her slowly. "Change of plans. Victor brought 12 men. They cut the power and jammed our communications. We're scattered." "Where's Alexander?" "Outside trying to get back in. The front entrance is blocked." Marcus handed her a radio. "Channel 3. Stay off it unless you're dying. Victor's people are listening." "What do I do?" "Survive." He checked his weapon. "I'm going to draw them away from this wing. When you hear gunfire, run for the library. The panic room. Don't stop for anything." He disappeared into the darkness before Mila could respond. She was alone again. The radio in her hand crackled once, then went silent. Mila moved to the servant's staircase and started down. The steps were narrow, steep, one hand on the railing, the other holding the gun. She was halfway down when she heard the first gunshot, then another, then a burst of automatic fire that sounded like the world ending. The gunfight lasted maybe 90 seconds. It felt like hours. Mila reached the bottom of the stairs and found herself in the kitchen. Massive, industrial, dark except for the moonlight coming through windows that overlooked the gardens. She could see shapes moving outside. Alexander's men trading fire with Victor's. Muzzle flashes lighting up the night like lightning. The library was on the other side of the house. To get there, she'd have to cross the main foyer. Mila moved to the kitchen door and peered out. The foyer was empty. Moonlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across marble floors. She ran. Her sneakers were nearly silent, but her breathing sounded deafening in the quiet. She was halfway across when she heard it. There. Mila dove behind a decorative column as bullets chewed into the marble where she'd been standing. Chips of stone exploded outward. She pressed herself flat and tried to remember how to breathe. Two men emerged from a side hallway. Dark tactical gear, weapons raised. "Miss Bennett?" The voice was accented, Russian. "Mr. Varga would like a word." Mila raised her gun with shaking hands. "Tell him to go to hell." She fired. The recoil nearly knocked her backward. The shot went wide, hitting the wall 3 feet to the left of the nearest man. He laughed. "You missed." Mila adjusted her aim the way Alexander had shown her and fired again. This time she didn't miss. The man went down clutching his shoulder. The second man opened fire, and Mila threw herself behind the column as bullets hammered into stone. Her ears were ringing. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the gun. The shooting stopped. Mila risked a glance around the column. The second man was advancing, his weapon trained on her position. She was trapped. No cover between here and the library. No way to run without getting shot. The radio in her pocket crackled. "Mila, kitchen entrance. Now." Alexander's voice. Mila didn't think. She just ran. Back across the foyer, through the kitchen, toward the door that led outside. Behind her, the man shouted and opened fire. Bullets punched through cabinets and shattered windows. Mila felt something hot graze her shoulder, but didn't stop. She hit the door at full speed and burst out into the night. Alexander was there. He caught her with one arm, pulling her behind cover as return fire chewed into the doorframe. His other hand came up with his weapon, and he put 3 rounds through the kitchen door with clinical precision. The shooting inside stopped. "Are you hit?" Alexander's voice was urgent as he checked her over. "Grazed. I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I said I'm fine." Mila grabbed his arm. "Victor's inside. He brought 12 men. They cut the power." "I know. We're regrouping." Alexander pressed a hand to his ear, listening to something on his radio. His expression went hard. "Victor's in the East Wing. He's looking for you." "Then let's give him what he wants." Mila, you said this was my choice." She met his eyes. "I choose to end this. Tonight. No more running. No more hiding. We finish it." Alexander was quiet for 3 seconds. Then he nodded. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. If I tell you to run, you run." "Okay." They moved back into the house. The gunfire had stopped. Alexander's men had pushed Victor's team back toward the East Wing, where the older part of the house created a maze of hallways and unused rooms. Alexander led her through the darkness with the confidence of someone who'd walked these halls 1,000 times. They passed 2 bodies, Victor's men, both dead. Mila tried not to look. They reached a door at the end of a long corridor. Alexander held up a fist, signaling her to stop. He listened for a moment, then opened the door fast and swept the room with his weapon. Empty. But there was blood on the floor, fresh, leading toward another door. "He's wounded," Alexander said quietly. Desperate. They followed the blood trail through 3 more rooms until they reached what looked like an old ballroom. High ceilings. Chandeliers covered in dust sheets. Windows along one wall showing the gardens outside. And in the center of the room, Victor Varga sat in a chair with a hand pressed to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Alexander." Victor's voice was weak but still carried that cultured edge. "Right on time." Alexander raised his weapon. "It's over, Victor. Your men are dead or captured. The city is mine. You have nothing left." "I have her." Victor's eyes slid to Mila. "The nurse, the promise, the weakness that proves you're not as untouchable as everyone thinks." "She's not my weakness." "No?" Victor smiled. It looked wrong on his pale face. "Then why are you here? Why risk everything for a woman you barely know?" "Because I made a promise to someone who mattered. Julia Bennett, the nurse who helped you cover up a murder." Victor coughed. More blood. "Did you tell Mila why you really killed Marcus Donovan? The truth?" "I told her enough. But not everything." Victor's eyes gleamed. Not that Marcus was coming to kill her. That he'd found out Julia knew his trafficking routes, and was going to testify against him. That you killed him because he was on his way to murder a nurse and her 5-year-old daughter. The words hung in the air. Mila's breath caught. What? Alexander's jaw was tight. Mila, is that true? She moved around him. You killed Marcus Donovan because he was coming to kill us? My mother and me? Yes. Alexander's voice was flat. Your mother stumbled onto information she shouldn't have. Marcus found out. I got there first. So you weren't just some criminal she helped cover up. You saved our lives. And then I spent 15 years using that debt to control her. Alexander's expression was empty. Don't make me into a hero, Mila. I'm not. Victor laughed. The sound was wet, painful. Even now you can't accept that you might have done one good thing, that maybe Julia trusted you because you earned it instead of bought it. Shut up, Victor. Make me. Victor tried to stand. Failed. Blood ran down his leg, pooling on the floor. Go ahead, Alexander. Finish it. Prove to your precious nurse that you're exactly the monster you think you are. Alexander moved forward, weapon raised. Mila caught his arm. Wait. Mila, just wait. She stepped in front of him, looked at Victor. You knew my mother was dying. You knew about the money Alexander gave her. You could have exposed it any time. Why didn't you? Victor's expression shifted. Something almost like respect flickered there. Because Julia Bennett was the only person who ever made Alexander Russo feel human, and watching him try to honor that debt while destroying himself in the process was more entertaining than any revenge I could have planned. You're sick. I'm honest. Victor coughed again. Your mother knew what Alexander was, what he'd become, and she forgave him anyway. That's not weakness, Miss Bennett. That's strength. The kind neither you nor Alexander seem to understand. Mila looked at the man bleeding out in front of her. The man who'd kidnapped her, tortured her, tried to kill her. The man who represented everything she should hate. But all she felt was tired. You lost, she said quietly. Not because Alexander is stronger. Not because he has more men or more money. You lost because you thought love was weakness. You thought caring about someone made you vulnerable. Doesn't it? No. Mila moved closer. It makes you fight harder, survive longer, become someone you never thought you could be. Victor studied her face. Then he laughed, and it sounded genuine. Maybe Julia was right about you too. He pulled something from his pocket. Alexander moved faster than Mila thought possible, his weapon coming up. But Victor wasn't reaching for a gun. He was holding a phone. One last surprise, he said. The men you captured? They have dead man switches. If I don't send a code in, he checked the screen. 4 minutes. They detonate the explosives in the foundation of this house. Alexander's expression went cold. You're bluffing. Am I? Feel free to test that theory. But I wouldn't recommend it if you want your nurse to survive the night. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Territory, respect, acknowledgement that I'm not just some pretender you can dismiss. Victor's finger hovered over the screen. Give me the docks and the West Side distribution. Give me half of what you built, or we all die here together. The room was silent except for the sound of Victor's labored breathing. Mila looked at Alexander. His face was stone, unreadable. But she could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The math of lives versus territory, power versus promises. Don't, she said quietly. Alexander's eyes cut to her. Mila, don't give him anything. If you do, this never ends. He'll always have leverage, always have a way to hurt people you care about. You'll die. Maybe. Or maybe he's bluffing. Or maybe your men already found the explosives and disabled them. Mila moved to stand beside Alexander. But even if he's telling the truth, you don't negotiate with people like him. My mother taught me that. You don't give bullies power just because they threaten violence. Victor's expression hardened. How noble. Let's see if you still feel that way when the ceiling comes down. His finger moved toward the screen. 2 things happened simultaneously. Alexander fired, and one of Alexander's men burst through the door shouting, "Explosives disabled! All 4 locations!" Victor's phone shattered in his hand. The bullet had gone through it before hitting his chest. He slumped back in the chair, eyes wide. Blood spread across his white shirt like a flower blooming. "Impossible," he whispered. We checked. We were sure. You were sloppy. Alexander's voice was cold. You rushed, got desperate, made mistakes. He lowered his weapon. And now you pay for them. Victor's breathing became shallower. His eyes found Mila's. She's going to break you, he said to Alexander. His voice was fading. That strength you love so much, it'll destroy you because you'll never be able to live up to it. Maybe, Alexander said, but I'll die trying. Victor smiled. Then he exhaled once and didn't inhale again. The room fell silent. Mila stared at the body in the chair. A man who'd controlled territories and commanded armies and terrorized a city. Gone in less time than it took to finish a sentence. Is it over? She asked. Yes. Alexander holstered his weapon. It's over. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Police, fire department. Someone had reported the gunfire. Alexander's men materialized from the shadows, cleaning, collecting, making calls to lawyers and officials who were paid to make problems disappear. Mila watched it all happen with a strange detachment. This was Alexander's world, power and violence wrapped in expensive suits and justified by promises made to dead people. And she was standing right in the middle of it. We need to go, Alexander said. The police will be here soon. Helen has your things already packed in a car. New identity. New location. Everything you need to start over. You're sending me away. I'm setting you free. He met her eyes. Like I should have done from the beginning. Mila looked around the ballroom. At Victor's body. At Alexander's men working with military precision. At the blood on the floor and the bullet holes in the walls, and the reality of what choosing this life would mean. Then she looked at Alexander, at the exhaustion in his eyes, and the blood on his hands, and the way he stood like he expected her to run and wouldn't blame her for it. No, she said. Mila, I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm not starting over somewhere safe while pretending the last week didn't happen. You can't stay here. This life, what I am, it'll destroy you. Or it won't. Mila moved closer. You said my mother saw something in you worth saving. Maybe she saw the same thing in me, the ability to survive in dark places without losing myself. That's not survival. That's a choice. Mila cut him off. The first real choice I've made in 3 years. And I choose this, you, whatever comes next. You don't know what you're choosing. I know exactly what I'm choosing. Her voice was steady. I'm choosing a man who killed to protect me before I even knew his name, who spent 15 years honoring a promise to a dying woman, who gave me every opportunity to walk away and never once made me feel like I owed him anything. Mila, Alexander's voice cracked, just slightly. If you stay, if you choose this, there's no going back. People will know you're with me. Enemies will use you, target you. Every day will be a risk. Every day is already a risk. At least this way, I'm making the choice instead of having it made for me. They stood in the ruined ballroom while sirens got closer and Alexander's men moved around them like shadows. Your mother would hate this, Alexander said quietly. My mother kept secrets for you for 15 years. She knew exactly who you were and trusted you anyway. Mila reached out and took his hand. It was warm, solid, real. I think she'd understand. Alexander looked down at their joined hands, then at her face. Something shifted in his expression. The careful control cracked, and underneath was something raw and desperate and almost like hope. If you stay, he said slowly, you do it on your terms, your rules. You work at the hospital, keep your life, your identity. I won't cage you. And if I want to be part of this, your world, then I'll teach you how to survive it, how to see the danger coming, how to protect yourself when I can't be there. Deal. The word hung between them for a heartbeat. Then Alexander pulled her close, one hand tangling in her hair, the other settling at the small of her back. You're insane, he whispered against her temple. Probably. This will be hard. I know. You'll see things, know things, carry things you can't tell anyone else. I'm already carrying them. Alexander pulled back enough to look at her. His eyes searched her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. When did you become this person? He asked. Maybe I always was, I just needed someone to stop protecting me long enough to find out. Outside, the sirens were close now, less than a minute away. Alexander's second-in-command appeared in the doorway. "Sir, we need to move." Alexander nodded, but he didn't let go of Mila's hand. They walked out of the ballroom together. Through the house with its bullet holes and bloodstains, past Alexander's men who nodded respectfully as they passed, out into the gardens where dawn was just starting to break over the horizon. Helen waited by a car. She saw them and smiled, actually smiled. "Miss Bennett, I'm glad you're staying." "Me too." Helen handed Alexander a phone. "The lawyers are ready. The police commissioner is on hold, and your associates are waiting for confirmation that the Vargas situation is resolved. Tell them it is." Alexander pocketed the phone. "And tell them I'm taking the day off." Helen's eyebrows rose. "Sir?" "You heard me. Handle it. I'll be available tomorrow." He guided Mila to a different car. Smaller, faster, the kind of vehicle that didn't announce itself. "Where are we going?" Mila asked as they drove through the gates. "Somewhere quiet, where we can think." Alexander's hand found hers on the seat between them. "And where you can change your mind without witnesses." "I'm not changing my mind." "We'll see." They drove out of the city as the sun rose, past the neighborhoods where Mila had spent 3 years believing she deserved the violence, past the hospital where she'd smiled through broken bones, past the life she'd built on lies and survival and the mistaken belief that staying small meant staying safe. An hour later, they stopped at a lake house Mila hadn't known existed. Small, private, windows overlooking water that reflected the morning sky. Inside smelled like cedar and coffee. There was a fire already burning in the fireplace. Someone, probably Helen, had stocked the kitchen and left fresh clothes in the bedroom. Alexander made coffee while Mila explored. 2 bedrooms. A bathroom with a tub big enough to drown in. A porch that extended over the water. She stood on that porch and watched the sun climb higher while Alexander brought out 2 mugs. "This is yours," he said. "If you want it. A place that's just yours. No guards, no staff. Just somewhere you can come when the rest of it gets too heavy." Mila took the coffee. It was perfect. The exact amount of cream she liked, without asking. "You've been watching me a long time," she said. "Yes?" "Tell me something true, something I don't know." Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The first time I saw you, you were walking out of the hospital after a night shift. It was raining. You stopped to give your umbrella to a homeless woman who was sitting under the awning. You got soaked walking to your car, but you were smiling." Mila remembered that night, 3 months ago. She'd been exhausted and hurting, and Ray had been waiting at home with a list of things she'd done wrong. "Why does that matter?" she asked. "Because in my world, people don't give away umbrellas. They don't smile in the rain. They don't choose kindness when cruelty is easier." Alexander looked out at the water. "And I realized that Julia had been right. You were worth protecting, not because of a promise, because of who you were." "Who I was. Past tense. Who you are." He turned to face her. "Last night you chose to stay, chose this life. But you're still the woman who gives away umbrellas. That part of you doesn't disappear just because you're standing next to me." "How do you know?" "Because I've been standing next to you for a week, and you've never once asked me to be something I'm not." Alexander's voice was rough. "Everyone else wants the monster or the man. You're the only person who seems okay with both." Mila set down her coffee, moved closer. Her casted arm was awkward between them, but she didn't care. "I need you to understand something," she said. "I'm not staying because I think I can fix you. I'm not staying because I have nowhere else to go. I'm staying because when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend anymore. I can be angry and scared and broken, and it's okay. That's a terrible reason to stay. Maybe, but it's my reason." Alexander studied her face. Then, slowly, carefully, he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't like the movies. It was awkward and tentative, and Mila's casted arm bumped his chest, and they both pulled back laughing. "That was terrible," Mila said. "Awful," Alexander agreed. They tried again, better this time, slower. Mila's good hand found his jaw, rough with stubble. His arms came around her waist, careful of her injuries. When they finally broke apart, the sun was fully up, painting the lake gold. "What happens now?" Mila asked. "Now you rest, heal, go back to work if you want, live your life." And you? I rebuild. Clean up the mess Victor left. Make sure everyone knows this city is still mine. Our city, Mila corrected. Alexander's expression shifted. Our city. They stood on the porch as morning stretched into afternoon, talked about nothing and everything, made plans and discarded them, learned how to exist in the same space without the weight of danger and secrets between them. Later, as the sun started to set, Alexander got a call. The police closed their investigation, he said after hanging up. Victor Varga killed in a confrontation with rival gang members. No connection to me or my operations. Clean. Is it really that easy? When you have the right people in the right positions? Yes. Mila should have been disturbed, should have asked more questions. But she found she didn't care. Victor was gone. Raymond was gone. The secrets that had controlled her life were buried with the people who'd held them. For the first time in years, she was free. 3 weeks later, Mila walked back into Memorial General Hospital. She wore her scrubs and her name badge in a new cast, white instead of purple, with signatures from every kid in pediatric oncology covering it from wrist to elbow. Her coworker Lily hugged her so hard they both nearly fell over. "Where the hell have you been? You disappeared. No one knew if you were dead or kidnapped or—" Lily pulled back and looked at her. "You look different." "I am different." "Good different?" "I don't know yet. Ask me again in 6 months." Dr. Ramos appeared in the hallway. "Nurse Bennett, my office, now." Lily winced. "You're so fired." But Dr. Ramos didn't fire her. He just looked at her casted arm and the fading bruises on her wrists and said, "If you ever need time off for any reason, you ask. No questions. Understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Now go check on the Andrews girl in 412. She's been asking for you since yesterday." Mila went. The Andrews girl was 8 years old with leukemia and a smile that could break your heart. She lit up when she saw Mila. "You came back." "Of course I did." "I made you something." The girl held out a drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one short. "That's you and me, so you remember." Mila's throat tightened. "I could never forget you." She worked her shift, took vitals and administered medications and held hands with kids who were too young to be this sick. Collected 3 new rocks for her jar. At the end of the day, she walked out of the hospital to find Alexander leaning against a car. Not the SUV, just a regular sedan. Normal. Unremarkable. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Making sure you got home safe." "I can take the bus." "I know, but humor me." They drove through the city as evening fell. Alexander told her about his day. Meetings, negotiations, the kind of business deals that probably involved things Mila was better off not knowing. Mila told him about the Andrews girl and the rock collection, and how good it felt to be back in scrubs instead of borrowed clothes. He dropped her off at a new apartment, not the one she'd shared with Raymond, somewhere clean and safe with working locks and neighbors who smiled in the hallways. "I'll pick you up tomorrow," Alexander said. "If you want." "I want." He kissed her, still awkward, still learning, but better than the first time. Mila watched him drive away, then went inside and unpacked the few belongings Helen had salvaged from her old life. Some clothes, her mother's jewelry box, the jar of rocks from the kids. She set the jar on the kitchen counter and added the 3 new ones. Her phone buzzed. Text from Alexander. "Sleep well." "You were incredible today." Mila smiled and texted back. "So were you." She fell asleep that night in her own bed, in her own apartment, with her own choices stretched out in front of her like an open road. 6 months later, Mila stood in the gardens of Alexander's estate, their estate now, watching koi fish swim lazy circles in the pond. Her arm had healed. The cast was gone. Dr. Morrison had declared it a perfect recovery. Her life had fallen into a rhythm. 3 days a week at the hospital. 2 days helping Alexander navigate the parts of his world that needed someone who understood how to talk to people instead of threatening them. 2 days for herself. She'd gone back to school, part-time, finishing the prerequisites for med school she'd abandoned years ago. Alexander had tried to pay for it. She'd refused, used her own money instead. The salary from the hospital plus what she earned consulting for his operations. Negotiating with suppliers. Mediating disputes. Translating the violence of his world into language that didn't require bloodshed. She was good at it. Better than she'd expected. People in Alexander's organization had stopped being surprised when she showed up to meetings. Now they expected her, respected her. She'd become part of the landscape. The nurse who stood beside the most dangerous man in the city and somehow made him seem almost human. Alexander appeared on the path behind her. He'd been in the city all day handling some crisis she didn't ask about. "How was your day?" he asked, settling onto the bench beside her. "Good. The Harrison kid is responding to treatment. Dr. Ramos thinks he'll be in remission by Christmas." "That's good news. How was yours?" "Productive." He paused. "Victor's old territory is fully integrated. No resistance. No problems." "Good." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fish and the sun set over gardens that had become as familiar to Mila as the hospital hallways. "I've been thinking," Alexander said finally, "about what comes next." "Next?" "The future. Long-term planning." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "This belonged to your mother." Mila's heart stopped. Inside the box was a gold locket. Simple. Elegant. The same one her mother had worn every day until she died. "How did you—" "She gave it to me before she died. Asked me to give it to you when you were ready." Alexander opened the locket. Inside were 2 photographs. On the left, Julia Bennett smiling at the camera. On the right, a new photo of Mila and Alexander together, taken at the lake house 3 weeks ago. "I don't understand. Your mother knew you'd find your way to me eventually. She planned for it. Asked me to keep this safe until you didn't need protecting anymore. Until you were strong enough to choose this life instead of being forced into it." Mila's vision blurred. She knew. She knew everything about who I was, what I'd become, the kind of life you'd have if you stayed with me. Alexander's voice was rough. "And she trusted that you'd be okay, that you were stronger than anyone gave you credit for. Was she right?" "Yes." He closed the locket and pressed it into her hand. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." Mila held the locket tight, feeling the weight of her mother's love and Alexander's faith, and her own hard-won survival all bound together in gold and memory. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat together as the last light faded from the sky, and the gardens lit up with carefully placed lights that made everything look softer than it was. Mila thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, walking home in the rain with a broken arm and practiced smiles and the certainty that this was all her life would ever be. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, someone who'd learned that surviving meant making choices that scared you and living with the consequences. Someone who'd traded one cage for another and discovered that freedom wasn't about where you lived or